I lived in Chile as a missionary for 2 years, and there was this one time that me and some missionaries were walking out of a church. As we came out of this church, we noticed a gringo, or a white man. In Chile, where we were at, which is south of Santiago, it is very uncommon to find anyone from North America, especially someone from North America who speaks English. And frankly, this guy didn't speak any Spanish either. He had been living in Chile for 2 years or 3 years. He was a doomsday prepper. He had everything planned out for when the world was about to end. He came up to the church as we were walking out and said, "Hey, I need some of the gringo missionaries to help me on my farm." As missionaries do, we offered our help and asked him, "What is it you need our help with?" He replied, "I need help harvesting the fruit I have on my land." That being said, we were a little confused as to why this man, who was I believe from Arkansas, moved all the way down to Chile just to grow a farm and to avoid the world coming to an end. Me and a missionary named Nathaniel Waters went out and rode our bikes and met this guy on his land, probably about 20 miles away from the nearest little town. We rode out there, got to his land, and to our amazement we found so many trees of fruit, so many bushes of fruit, apple trees, oranges, all these things. But what caught our eye was the cherry tree. He said, "Now, there's too much fruit for me to handle. You guys can take as much fruit as you want, as long as you share it with the missionaries that you know." We said, "Perfect." First problem was we didn't have anywhere to put the fruit. So we got some boxes that he had kind of just keep stored up, big old boxes. And we started to pick fruit. We picked blackberries, raspberries, all these fruits. And then he was like, "I have a ton of cherries." Now for me in the States, red cherries and yellow cherries are very unique. They have a different taste. The red cherries are sweeter, the yellow cherries tend to be a little bit more tart. And the yellow cherries are much more expensive. We had never harvested cherries before. We didn't realize the challenge it would be, or the challenge there would be to pick cherries. Obviously, when you come up to a cherry tree, they grow on the vines. That being said, all the low-hanging fruit is really easy to grab, but it's gone like that. So once you start picking at it and pulling, you put them in the box, then you have to try and reach the taller cherries. As you do that, you start to appreciate the fruit more. You start to realize how much labor it actually takes to obtain a cherry. If the cherry is very, very ripe, you might be lucky enough to where you can shake the hell out of the tree and the cherries will fall down. Then you have to pick up the cherries. Without knowing this previously, we did not realize that we were bruising the cherries. We'd grab the tree, we'd shake it and shake it and shake it, and all the loose or very ripe cherries would land and hit the ground, thus bruising. We'd put them in the box, and as we started to get one tree done, we'd move on to the next. There wasn't a specific order as to where the yellow and red cherry trees were, but where we saw cherries, we'd go and we'd pick. As we got all the cherries boxed up, we had about 3 boxes that weighed each probably about 40 to 50 pounds worth of cherries. Now, on today's market, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of cherries as well. We had ridden our bikes to this man's property. So we had an issue. How are we going to get the cherries back home? So what we did is we straddled up the boxes and put them on the center part of our bikes, and off we went. Chafing our legs, burning, and exhausted after arriving home after about that 20-mile bike ride home, we enjoyed the cherries. We called the other missionaries over, they came over, and we shared with the fruit. Oftentimes we take for granted the fruit we see at the grocery store. There's always a story behind the fruit. For me, when I see that cherry, or when I see a cherry, I always shoot back to that memory of harvesting those cherries with Nathaniel Waters and that gringo in South America, Chile. It brings back memories and helps me appreciate really what it is we have. Cherries, a fruit so small, can have a huge impact.